Hello, this is Dr. Drew Taft with Foot and Ankle Associates of Southern New Hampshire, and we're back for another series of videos with our fast foot facts. This next series we're going to focus on hammer toes. So these next few videos we'll go over a couple of topics, discussing them. I thought we would start off by talking about what a hammer toe is, how might you be able to identify if you have one, and to start off by also talking about what the symptoms of having a hammer toe are as well. So to start off by just defining a hammer toe is basically any sort of bending or curvature of the toe. So in a perfect world, a toe should be relatively straight and out in front of the foot, but a hammer toe is basically describing any sort of bend or contracture in the toe itself. If I pull up my handy skeleton model here, and we're looking at the toes, all right, normally these toes, which are connected together by two joints, okay, small joint here and then another one back here, those joints allow the toe to bend, okay, but any sort of bending motion at those joints, okay, whether it's at the first joint here or the one next to it, okay, any bending or curvature at those joints basically considers this to be a hammer toe. Now you may hear some other words get thrown around like mallet toe, which generally just describes where the bending is taking place in the toe, which joint it may be bending at, but they're basically all categorized under a big umbrella term of a hammer toe, or a curvature or a bend of the toes. So how do you know if you have one? Well, the easiest thing to do is just to look down and see if your toes are straight out in front, or if you see that there's any sort of bending or curvature in the toes, either when you're sitting or when you're standing. You might see that there is a little bit of a bump out of the toes when you're sitting or standing. That would certainly indicate that you've got one. Sometimes if you see any small calluses or corns forming on the tops or the sides of the toes, or if you look down and you see that there are areas of little red irritation on the tops of the toes, those also would indicate that there's some sort of rubbing or friction on the toe. With, can be certain shoe gear that makes it worse, but any sort of rubbing or friction causing some redness or callousing or corns is also an indicator that there is a bony prominence that would also indicate that you've got a hammer toe. And then, symptoms. Pain is certainly one of them. They can cause discomfort depending on the rubbing or the irritation of the shoe. So depending on the shoe gear that you're wearing can certainly cause it to become painful or uncomfortable. But not all hammer toes are, and a lot of whether or not a hammer toe is painful or not will also depend on the degree of flexibility. So if the hammer toe is really flexible and you can reduce it really easily, then a lot of times they're not quite as painful because they can adapt to the shoes or the activity. But if they become more rigid, then which may indicate some arthritis, then they don't flex as well, they don't adapt as well, so you start getting more rubbing and irritation. So you can get some pain over the joint, you can get some pain at the tips of the toes if they're bouncing off of the shoes. So pain is probably the number one symptom, but then again, you don't necessarily have to be symptomatic with these guys, but certainly seeing corns and calluses and areas of irritation would indicate that you've got one. So just a brief overview of what they are, what you would look for. If they are starting to become uncomfortable, what we'll do is we'll dive in next time as to what would be a general cause, or what we typically see as the cause of hammer toes, and then we'll top things off at the end with how we go about treating these. Thanks for tuning in, and we appreciate it. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.